Hi, my friends, and a happy new year to all you. It's your tour guide to the wrestling side, me, Preston E. And on this video, we're going to have a look at some top competitors for Chris Jericho when, and yes, I do mean when, he returns to the WWE. First up, we're going to pair Chris Jericho against AJ Styles. Now, Chris Jericho and AJ Styles fought quite a bit in 2016 in the WWE with matches on Raw, Fastlane, and WrestleMania 32. I believe just like John Cena revisited his rivalry from 2016 with AJ Styles, AJ in his final year will be taking on Chris Jericho in his return year, this year. Up next, we're going to have a look at a new legend to take on the old school legend in Chris Jericho with Dominic Mysterio. Now, currently, Dominic Mysterio is on the injury list, but I believe he'll be returning back pretty soon. Who knows, maybe even by the Royal Rumble. But Chris Jericho versus Dominic Mysterio for promos alone will be an awesome sight to behold. And old Jericho has quite the history with the Mysterios dating back to Ray Mysterio back in the day. So Dominic and Chris Jericho will have quite an awesome feud to build up on Chris Jericho's return. And speaking of the Mysterios, Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho has a long-standing feud dating back all the way to WCW. And it spilled over into WWE in 2009. Well, I believe the two will be revisiting their feud and reigniting their feud to the new era in 2026. Pick up sticks. Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho know each other like a book inside and out, and I do believe the two can bring out the best in each other one more again, my friends. And what about Chris Jericho squaring off against Gunther, the new legend killer? Well, Chris Jericho may get a possible chance to do that, as Gunther seems to be tearing through all the old school legends, the heroes of our past. John Cena, Goldberg, and might old Chris Jericho be added to the list? Now, that's just blasphemy, isn't it? And speaking of legend killers, what about the OG legend killer and Randy Orton? Chris Jericho and Randy Orton definitely are not strangers to each other, as Chris Jericho and Randy Orton has had quite the rivalry in the WWE, either facing off against each other or tag teaming with each other between 2003 all the way up to 2016. Randy Orton revisited his long-standing feud with John Cena just last year. Might Randy Orton be going up and reigniting his feud against Chris Jericho this year? My sources say, yay. Getting back to Chris Jericho taking on up-and-comers, we had Chris Jericho squaring off against Dominic Mysterio for a future legend. Well, what about Chris Jericho squaring off against another future legend in Braun Breaker? Now, Chris Jericho had quite the rivalries and matches against Scott and Rick Steiner back in the day in WCW. Might he be revisiting that feud once again by squaring off against Braun Breaker in 2026? Now, a lot of people, myself included, expected that Chris Jericho was possibly going to come in and help Braun Breaker win in his match against CM Punk this past Monday night on Raw, scoring him the title and possibly solidifying Chris Jericho as a heel, as he would be going up soon against CM Punk. Now, we'll be talking about CM Punk in a minute, but Chris Jericho might take Braun Breaker under his wing. He might join up with Braun Breaker in the division, or he might be feuding against Braun Breaker in 2026. Only time will tell, but I do believe these two will be crossing paths soon. And speaking of someone who was in Vision at one time, Seth Rollins has quite the long-standing feud with Chris Jericho himself. Between 2014, when Seth Rollins was with The Shield and eventually broke up with them later that year, and all the way up to 2016, Chris Jericho and Seth Rollins wrestled on and off. Might we be revisiting that feud again? I sound like a broken record, but I think we shall, my friends, as Seth Rollins and Chris Jericho have brought out the best in each other and before, and I believe will do once again. Cody Rhodes versus Chris Jericho. Now, I believe that Chris Jericho will probably be coming in as a babyface. But if you know anything about Chris Jericho, you know that the man just cannot stand to stay babyface for too long. He likes to play it up as a heel. He might be playing it up as a heel against Cody Rhodes, or he might be the babyface with Cody Rhodes going heel. Who knows? They both may be facing each other as faces too. But Cody Rhodes and Chris Jericho have quite the rivalry that they can revisit from AEW in 2019 with their match at Full Gear. And before AEW even, Chris Jericho and Cody Rhodes fought in 2013 on Main Event and SmackDown in the WWE. Perhaps they can reignite a feud from AEW to cross over to have a major feud in the WWE in 2026. Now, getting back to some more up-and-coming stars and legends of the future, what about Obafemi, who just vacated his title on NXT and is getting called up to the main event roster real soon, probably on Raw, could be on SmackDown. But either way, I believe that wrestling against Chris Jericho, picking up some victories against Chris Jericho, can only strap the rocket to Obafemi even further into the stratosphere. And what about LA Knight? Yeah, can't forget about LA Knight. Him and Chris Jericho on the promos alone, I would love to see. That would be fire. And the matches wouldn't be too bad either. Book it. Now, if there's one match I definitely want to see, probably top 5 matches I want to see revisited upon a Chris Jericho WWE return, it's definitely Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens. Not only do I want to see a match between those two again, or a long-standing feud between those two again, I would also love to see a partnership between those two again, because their 2017 storyline together that turned from the Festival of Friendship, where Owens attacked Jericho, and then they had an awesome feud, as one that was just a big highlight of 2017. I would love to see that revisited again, and so would a lot of fans. Not just a feud between the two, but a partnership between the two as well, because those two brought the best out of each other as both partners and rivals. Man, they were just go together. Now, currently, Kevin Owens is sidelined with a neck injury, but some sources say he may be returning in 2026. Definitely hope so. And if he does, I'm going to say when he does, that match is definitely, and that partnership definitely is on the list. See what I did there, Chris? The list. Drink it in, man. And another top 5er for me of matches I would love to see Chris Jericho reignite again upon his return into the WWE. Probably number 1 on the list would be CM Punk for me. Chris Jericho and CM Punk, man, they had an awesome feud upon Chris Jericho's return in 2012 when he was doing all that stuff with It Begins. The whole stuff ultimately was a nod to Chris Jericho coming back, not only to fight CM Punk, but take the title of best in the world from CM Punk, because CM Punk at the time was calling himself best in the world. Before that, Chris Jericho was calling himself the best in the world. And those creepy little vignettes in 2012 and late 2011, they had the little boy and the little girl playing up on the end of the world as you know it. Some people at the time thought it was going to be Undertaker. Some people even thought it was going to be Sting because It Begins rearranged was I Be Sting. But ultimately, it came out to be Chris Jericho, and the feud the two had culminating in that year's WrestleMania in 2012 really was one of the better feuds that I thought was going on at the time, and one of the better feuds that both CM Punk and Chris Jericho had that I would definitely want to see revisited again, even in 2026, man. I think that would be fire. So let the countdown begin. Probably number 30 at Royal Rumble, right? Know of any that I missed? Let me know who you would like to see Chris Jericho face or team with down in the comments section below, because where else does it go? And please like, sub, and share. I've been Preston E. Garrison, and I'm out of here.